You're listening to Gearing Up, an Everyday Carry podcast, a show that's made for the community, featuring interviews with makers, creators, and members of the community, and discussions on current trends in the industry. Follow along as we talk about life, gear, hobbies, and more. And be sure to stay tuned for new episodes every week. Hey guys, thanks so much for checking this interview out with Joseph VERO from VERO Engineering. Quick shout out to the sponsor for Gearing Up in Season 4, and that's everydaycarry. We'll talk a little bit more about them in the middle of the episode, but thank you guys again for continuing to support. Thanks to everydaycarry for sponsoring, and I hope you guys like my chat with Joseph. Hello everyone, welcome back to Gearing Up. I am your host Greg, and today I'm joined by someone I'm really excited to talk to. It's been on the books for a little bit now, but we're finally getting to it. And that is Joseph. Is it Joe or Joseph? Do you have a preference?
I do. I actually prefer Joseph.
You prefer Joseph. Okay, cool.
Thank you
Because
for
I
asking.
go by Greg, and nobody ever calls me Gregory out of the gate unless I'm in trouble. So it's usually my mom or my wife. Okay, cool. So I am joined by Joseph VERO
Yeah.
Engineering, insanely talented knife designer, knife maker.
Oh, stop.
No. I listen. If you have not listened to any previous episodes, then you don't know that this is really just my trick to get people on, where I can just gush about them for like 30, 40 minutes. Sam, Raven the Pirate, he fell for it. Peter, Rambler May,
Good, very, very good episode. I liked Sam.
these guys they fall for it. So, anyways, no. If you guys have not heard of VERO Engineering, like I said, I have so many things I want to dive into as far as like your design language and all of that stuff. But I guess the best way to start, I've kind of given away what it is that VERO Engineering is and what you do, but I really would like just kind of your quick bio, like just a walkthrough of what VERO Engineering is, what it is to you, and how it kind of got started. Just super quick pitch on that.
Yeah, sure. So first, thank you for having me on. This is awesome. My
Absolutely.
first podcast. I've been listening to podcasts for years, and always imagine a day where I'd be sitting at my computer talking into a microphone to
Yes,
someone. So this
making
is really
dreams
cool.
come true.
Thanks, man. Really appreciate it. Yeah, this all happened kind of by accident. I'm a design engineer by trade, and I was trying to explain to a friend a flipper mechanism that I was thinking about, and wondering why people don't design flippers this way. And I've been a knife collector and enthusiast for years, and I've always been a push button guy.
Right.
You prime the flipper and it flies out, and that's how I've always done it, unless the knife warrants a light switch.
Okay.
So, I was talking to a friend, and I was like, why doesn't anybody design a knife like this? And he had no idea what I was trying to explain to him. So I was like, you know what? I'll just draw it up real quick. So I drew it up real quick and I sent it to him, and he was like, that's cool. I get what you're talking about now. I don't know why people don't design it like that.
Right.
And then my job, I kind of ebbs and flows with how much I actually design and then move into production and stuff. So I stopped designing for a while, and I kind of had that itch to design something. So my wife was pregnant at the time, and I had a little bit of extra time at night. So I just, did a little extra design here and there, and
Right.
then sent it back to my friend, and he said, that's cool. And I sent it to some other friends. I said, that's cool. And one thing led to another. I got the prototype made, brought it to Blade Show, and kind of the rest is history.
Yeah, people loved it. I mean, and that's so. I think the theme of this episode just has to be design, because I think and if you've listened to the podcast, anybody that's listening along, if you guys have listened for a while, you
Mm.
know that one of my frequent sentiments is that there's just not a whole lot exciting happening, and I think that the more I talk to people in the community and the more I do these shows, I kind of pull that back a little bit, because I think there are exciting things happening. I think it's just where you look.
Right.
And there are a lot of makers that have thousands and thousands and thousands of followers, and just they're kind of getting to that cookie cutter mode, and they just kind of hone in on that one knife or that one design. And when I saw, I'm trying to remember the knife that, because I don't remember who started following who first, or who found who first. I think your personal account might have followed me first,
Mhm.
and then I was like, oh, okay, this guy. I think maybe I'm misremembering, but when you look at the knives that you've designed, it is very, very clear that design is extremely important to you, and to hear that it kind of started from a conversation, and just about, hey, why don't people do that? That makes total sense. So,
Yeah.
I can completely see that. So, just real quick before we jump into the knives themselves, you said, by day you're a design engineer. I mean, do you want to elaborate a little bit more on like your day job and what you do there?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a mechanical engineer by trade,
Okay.
for school by schooling, and I work for a company that helps law enforcement make decisions. So we
Okay.
we we bring in intelligence to the people that need intelligence,
Okay.
and some of that intelligence is aerial footage, so drone footage and helicopter and plane.
Uh-huh.
Um, so if I help get that information to the cloud so
Okay.
that people can that need to have that information. So in
Nice.
doing that, I work with cell modems and Pelican cases and tying in drones and all that stuff. So it's it's I get I get to design for a purpose,
Uh-huh.
but I don't get to design for style, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. Um,
Function over fashion.
yeah, well, kind of. One thing that I actually found interesting when I got into this field is that law enforcement guys love their tech.
Sure.
They do, and one thing they love is showing it off and being able to say, "This is
Right.
what I have," and if it works well, and um, especially if it works well, then other law enforcement agencies and their friends all want it too, and it's very
Yep.
similar to the knife community and the EDC community.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah.
It's just funny how if somebody has a knife that looks good and works well and is perceived to be a good knife by their friends, it's kind of the same thing in the tech industry and law
Yeah.
enforcement industry. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah. I mean, and the only reason I ask is one thing that I've noticed in doing these conversations is there is, for folks that still have day jobs, there's some folks that have been, whether it's, they've been fortunate enough, or whether that was they've been deliberate enough, I should say, because there's some folks that don't want to leave their day job. But for the
Mhm.
folks that have, um, that's all they talk about. But then when I get these folks that still have a day job and kind of do this on the side, it's always interesting to see that sort of crossover in just elements from the day job. So I like hearing about that. That's always
Yeah.
exciting to me.
So about that, so I one question I get more now than I have ever
Sure.
is, do I plan on doing this full time?
Yeah.
And my answer always is, I honestly love my day job. I love what I
Yeah.
do. And it's good that I get to do both. I like it's good that VERO Engineering is a my wife has been helping out with emails and helping to ship, and when the knives come in or when I have a lot of orders or something, family members jump in and help. So it's really cool that I get to do that. But then I also get to wake up on Monday. I know it sounds weird. Get to wake up on Monday morning and go to a job that I enjoy working
Yeah.
at and doing. So
No, I mean that's good. I think what I've found, and that's sort of the same thing for me too, right? I have a day job that I do in fact enjoy going to, and
mhm,
this is not so much as an escape as it is just doing something else to scratch the creative itch. And I think that that's what I've found is there's a lot of folks that still have a day job that I've talked to that they want to keep their day job because they like it, but they also like doing this other stuff too, and it
Right.
just kind of fulfills that creative need in a different way or a different, you know what I mean? So it's always cool to see that. So I like I said, I'm always interested in how the two worlds of like the day job and the knife making, knife designing, how they converge. So it's
Right.
cool to talk about. So I want to jump into some of the knife models that you've got. So your first, if I remember correctly, the Impulse, was that your first design?
Yes.
Okay, and so kind of going back to that first point you made about sort of the design elements and the why don't people do this? Well, what did you set out to do or to change about, sort of normal knife design that you either accomplished or sort of accomplished, or maybe you think you didn't accomplish with the Impulse? What was the first goal with that one?
So when I originally drew that first CAD drawing, the knife looked completely different.
Right.
It looked nothing like it looks now, or even at the prototype phase. But what what was always there was the flipper tab
Hmm.
being in the position, which is high. If you guys have never seen the Impulse, you have to look at it while it's closed. The flipper tab is in line, very close to in line with the back of the handle. It doesn't protrude like most flipper tabs do.
And can I just say, as someone that doesn't care for flippers, thank you, because that, like, I'm you 100%. I'm like, yeah. I mean, now that I see, of course, I'm not a designer, and I never would have thought, hey, let's do this. But like to see it designed like this, like, it just
Right.
makes so much more sense. So,
It
anyways,
does.
go
It does make
go on.
sense. So the fact that it's not protruding doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work worse. You just have to make it work better. And the way I imagined it working is, you take the flipper tab, and most of the time the flipper tab is either in line with the pivot or slightly below the pivot,
Hmm.
and you have to prime it to overcome the detent, and then when that happens, the knife flips out.
Right.
Pretty basic, but you still have to prime it. Well, what I did was I took the flipper tab, I moved it, I moved it closer to the pivot, and I moved it above the pivot. So the line of action. So when you actually Gen One Impulse was designed so you can push the flipper tab straight down. You didn't need to prime it at all. You just pulled it straight down, and the
Hmm.
blade flips out. Uh, that was always in my brain, and trying to figure out how to do that well and make it look good.
Hmm.
That kind of was secondary than making that flipper tab work correctly.
Right.
So if you go to my Instagram, I actually just saw this today for the first time in a while. You can actually see a 3D printed version of the Impulse
Love it.
that I
That's
yeah that
cool.
I show. I was actually I'm kind of surprised that I showed that on my Instagram
Right.
now, but back then it was just something really cool that I wanted to show off, that it
Yeah,
worked, and it worked well. Fully locking,
I see
the
it.
flipper tab worked perfect. Yeah, it just
That's
it
fantastic.
and so I I in my head I was like, wow, if this works on a 3D print, it's got to work well,
Yeah.
you know, fully machined out of titanium and steel on bearings, and with a proper detent. So my philosophy is, if it worked on 3D printing, it's got to work in real manufacturing. So
Right.
yeah. So then the hard part was making it look good, I guess, because now I was able to get the flipper tab right. And my my design philosophy was always a little bit different, in my day job than it was on this.
Uh huh.
When you work for a company that, I need this done by a certain time because we have to produce it or whatever, that's a very different um, design philosophy. You have to think about things differently then.
Sure.
What was really cool about this was, just because it was a side project, I was able to change something about the knife that I didn't like, and then come back in a day and check it out and
Yeah.
see, you know. Um, and then
Everything got
once
to
I
marinate a little bit.
Yeah, and what I found to be the most interesting thing was if I if I loved something, if I was like, "Oh, that's the perfect angle," and then I came back a day or two later, I might hate it when I came
Right.
back to it, you know.
Yeah.
But I definitely would have made that decision at that time. So I was
Interesting.
able to, yeah, I was able to like take a step back and go, I'm gonna let this sit for a while, come back and see, and then not having a deadline on it, I was able to do that over and over and over and over again until I thought it was done. I put it down. I stopped looking at it. I came back a month later, and I was so happy with it. As soon as I opened it and I saw it, and
Yeah.
that's kind of when I knew.
Yeah. I mean, and and now you've kind of given yourself the benefit of hindsight. You can go back and look and see, and that that's cool. To me, that it's cool to hear that story, and just hear something come from an idea to execution, and the fact that we one of the episodes that you guys will hear later on in the season, depending on when I post these, is my chat with TRA Designs Taylor and the guy that does the Chugger, the chameleon bottle openers.
Mhm.
I don't know if you've seen his work. He's really big into 3D printing, and we had a whole aside on 3D printing and just some of the cool things you can do,
Oh, that's
and
cool. I'm looking forward to hearing that.
the fact that you did a completely working and locking 3D printed flipper, like, just furthers that point. So,
And not to toot my own horn, but the 3D printing nerds out there will appreciate it. That's ABS plastic. That's not easy to
ooh,
print. It's not
yeah, no,
easy to
no,
print like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
functioning moving parts. No, I like it. So, is there is there anything? So it sounds to me like a lot like function is really important, and aesthetics not necessarily take a backseat, but you really had this function, this specific function in mind, and then you went back later and kind of worked around that function to design. My curiosity kind of goes to the design language. Is there anything specific outside of the knife world that just inspires these designs in terms of just the aesthetics? I mean, or is this just kind of something you've cooked up in your head over, a couple years of tinkering?
So I think I actually had a question about this recently. Bearded Gear did
Hmm.
a review on my knives recently. Really good guy, and he kind of asked me a similar question, and I think I knew it at the time. I think I knew it before the question was
Hmm.
asked, but the fact that I've been uh, collecting knives for years, I I always had something about every knife that I wanted to change. You
Yeah,
know, there was always that one thing that was, oh man, this knife is fantastic, but I would have done it like this, and
right.
it didn't make the knife bad. It was
Listen,
it's
I
just
feel like that's how engineers just think. That's a thing with them, right? Like, maybe I'm crazy. Anyways, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry.
if you're not trying to make it better, then what's the point, right?
Right.
So yeah, so like I was talking about the flipper tab. I had an Arius, a Koenig Arius.
Hmm.
I mean, it's a perfect knife to so many people, but there's always a small thing that I would have changed, right?
Yeah.
Or a Sabenza or a Shiro. They're not wrong. They're not wrong in their design,
Right.
but there's things that I would have done differently,
Yeah.
and I never had that opportunity to do it differently, or do it the way I kind of wanted to see it done.
Yeah.
Uh, so when I did have the opportunity, which was the impulse, I already knew what I wanted to do. Maybe I knew what I didn't want to do.
Hmm.
That maybe makes more
Well, and
sense.
sometimes that's more important. Like,
Yeah,
no, I'm with you. So, just scrolling back through, you posted the 3D printed prototype on May 21st of 2019.
yeah,
So, a year and a half ago, give or take. I mean, and before that, you posted two like a week before that, you posted like this design. Hey, I'm having it produced. So, question being, how long from this conversation with your friend until you were holding that 3D printed prototype? What was the time span there?
So, I actually recently went back into my CAD model to find out when I drew the first, you know, I started with the pivot, right? When
Hmm.
I drew the first pivot point, and it was end of February.
Good God. You like you listen. I told you I was gonna gush, but this blows my mind. Like again, it's a testament to talented makers. Like it's crazy the journey that you guys go through. And it was like it was almost meant to be when you just to do something that quickly to go from something in your brain, a conversation with a
Mhm.
friend, to you're holding a plastic version that works
Yeah,
in a few weeks time. Like what?
yeah, yeah.
Like what? It just blows my mind. Anyway, so I don't mean to interrupt. So
No,
so
it's
I
all
guess
right.
getting back to it. So a few weeks time, you just did that original mock up, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, like I said, the first version was very different, and then the iterations to get to, actually, here, let me pull it up real quick. So, yeah, the first versions were a very, very different knife. And then very quickly it evolved into kind of the Tonto with the fillets on the side,
Hmm.
that you kind of see in that first CAD drawing that I posted.
Yeah.
But from that to the prototype, there
Hmm.
were, I mean, so many just little constant changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those things where I needed to kind of take a step back once in a while to
Uh huh.
just make sure that that was the right decision.
Sure.
And it all kind of came together. And um, then when I got the prototype in hand,
Hmm.
I knew that those were the right decisions. I mean, I still made changes after I got that prototype,
Sure.
but the functionality of it was there already, and I was very, very pleased with
It's it's yeah, it blows my mind. Anyway, so
it.
sorry. So I guess the thing that it just in speaking with a few folks, I feel like I won't say there's only two, but the two that stick out to me the most in terms of just types of designers and makers. There's the guys that do kind of everything by hand and take a slab of metal and pound it out and grind it out and shape it. And then there's the guys that are working on the computer doing these crazy designs, and like it's a skill that I'll never understand, but I absolutely love it and respect it. Like, and just seeing, I compare it to like God, I'm drawing a blank. Oz Machine Company.
Oh, right,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah, Oz I guess it's
yeah.
Oz. I don't
OZ
know,
mach- yeah.
but he kind of the same thing. And to me, that just like to see you, and again, I'm stalking older Instagram posts where I see that you were making some tools and you were doing some, just that idea of just you've almost got this kind of itch, and then all of a sudden you've got this design, and it's super cool to me, and I like seeing that sort of evolution of the design. So
Those tools were. Did you check out the dates on them?
yeah, the
Those are
2014,
really, really old.
2014, 20. Yeah, yeah, no, no, listen, there was a 5-year gap between. I'm not saying
That's
that they
that's what
were.
that's what you call college.
Listen, hey, no, no, I respect the game though. Like that's cool to see. Um, and I'm glad that you still have them up there because some people would have been like, "Nope, I'm gonna take these down."
No, I'm proud of
Um,
those, man. I love those things. And actually, somebody that got one of those pocket tools, the little pry bar things,
uh-huh.
messaged me the other day and goes, "Hey, do you remember this?" And I was like, "Man, I can't believe you still have that."
Yeah, it's really good. Maybe we need another run of that. I'm just kidding. Anyways, no, you've got more exciting things on the horizon. So, um, one of the things that really stood out to me is you came out with the Impulse, and it was called the Impulse and what you dubbed the first generation. Now there is a second generation that already exists and a third generation that's kind of in the mix, in the works. Yes,
Yeah.
no. So
Oh yeah.
what I wanted to kind of dive into that and talk about, so what was the difference between the Impulse Gen 1 and what folks now are getting slash got the Gen 2, and maybe moving into some of the changes for Gen 3. What do those changes look like between each generation?
So it kind of goes back to how the flipper tab works, and
Mhm.
um, when you actuate the flipper tab, you push straight down on the flipper tab, and that's how it was designed,
Mhm.
um, and it works well like that. The problem is that I'm asking a guy who's been collecting knives for 20 years to change the way he flips a knife,
Right.
and you can't do that.
It's not it's
You
not
know,
easy. It's not an easy
it's not
change.
easy. Exactly.
We're a stubborn
Um,
people.
right. So just because it was designed to work one way, it doesn't mean it can't work both ways. So the Gen 1 Impulse was designed, it has a flat top on the flipper tab
Okay.
so that you put your finger down on it and pull straight down and it flips out.
Right.
Not meant to be primed. However, in testing, I found that if I put if I round off the corner of the flipper tab,
Uh-huh.
then you can prime it, though it doesn't need it. You can prime it, and it actuates just as well, as it did before. But it allows the person that immediately wants to prime their knife. It allows them to prime it and actuate their knife.
Yeah.
So I went ahead and made that change on the flipper tab for Gen 2. Um, and then just small geometric changes, nothing major. I mean, I was very happy with the Gen 1. But then again, some people did say they wanted to prime the knife.
Yeah.
So I made that change.
So, and to me, this is everything that is wrong with the knife community, and I want to thank you personally for coming up with a new way. I think there's, well, and hear me out. I think there's a lot of knife companies, knife makers, knife designers, what have you, that have a design, and although there are flaws with it, it's very good design. But although there are flaws, they won't change them for the sake of
Hmm.
the knife design. And
Yeah.
um, not to pick on my Spyderco fans, but like a Para 2, right? The PM2 has been out for forever, and are there
Hmm.
tweaks or changes you could probably make to it? Yeah, I'd imagine,
Hmm.
but they just don't. And there
Right.
are, to be fair, there are, like, I forget what Spyderco calls it, where they've got like the CQ, like, QC, I don't know, whatever it is, but they'll do some small incremental, like, quality control changes, but full on functionality or design tweaks don't happen.
Yeah.
Um, and so I guess what my point is I love this idea of creating like a Gen 1, a Gen 2, a Gen 3, where the idea of the knife is still relatively the same, but you've
Hmm.
taken some of the, kind of like you were saying earlier, like, every knife that I've ever owned, there's always one thing or two things I'd change about it, and you're kind of doing that and kind of, again, evolving the knife, and while still staying true to the original design. So I
Right. And
absolutely love that.
it goes back to the if you're not making something better, then what's the point, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Was it always your intention to do generational changes, or was it just something that kind of happened as the knife got
I
into
wasn't even
people's
intending
hands?
to have it generation 2. I didn't even know I
Okay.
was gonna have I didn't even know. So, real quick, I'll go back to the kind of the origin story.
Yeah.
There were only 100 Gen 1 impulses
Okay.
because I only ever planned on producing 100 knives.
Yeah.
It was never I didn't have this grand plan of starting a knife company and growing it to be taking over the world.
Right.
Um, I had this knife idea that I liked. Friends liked it too. I brought it to Blade Show. I didn't realize how happy it would make me to see people flip it out for the first time. See how
Yeah.
well the flipper tab works. Them go, oh, like they get it. Oh, like
Yeah.
question, wait, why don't people do this? Like that made me really happy to see.
Yeah.
And then I, decided to do a very small run of 100. I don't even know another knife that has only done 100,
Yeah.
in a run. And that was kind of it. I wasn't planning on doing a Gen 2. Um,
But you opened the door, and it just happened, right?
I just, I mean, one thing I wasn't expecting was after they sold. So they sold out um, in the first night of pre-order, which I
Wow.
was not expecting.
Yeah. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, yes, I was shocked. So I definitely wasn't expecting that. Then I wasn't expecting when they actually hit, when people started posting them. I wasn't expecting to get messages as frequently as it was. When's Gen 2? When's Gen 2? Um, I just wasn't expecting that.
Yeah.
So I guess I kind of had to at that point.
You open the door, and then like you said, the rest was history. It just kind of happened.
Yeah.
Um, that to me though, that's the indication of just an extremely well thought out design, and just based on your background, and and getting to know you, that seems right up your alley. So it doesn't surprise me that that's what happened. It almost doesn't surprise me that that's how it happened. But like, just watching, and I've been following for a little while. Not
Mhm.
I was following after the Gen 1s launched, I know that.
Yeah.
And you came out with the Fulcrum shortly after, or was that, did you do Gen 2 and then the Fulcrum? Where was
No,
that
so
in the
no,
timeline?
it was in Gen 1.
Mhm.
Then the Fulcrum was kind of soon after Gen 1.
Okay. And for those that don't know, the Fulcrum is a pry bar with a couple of, are they 1/8 inch hex bits, is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which,
4 mil. Yeah.
thank you for doing that, because nobody does that. Everybody uses the bigger ones, so it's really nice
And
to,
why again? Why, like why not? It
yeah.
just it makes sense.
Well, and what you end up with is a really compact package that can
Mhm.
hold a lot more functionality, and you're really not sacrificing any, structural integrity as far as, the day-to-day use for what this tool would be used for as far as the hex bits
Right.
go. So,
Yeah. Yeah. You
um,
don't need a 1/4 inch bit to put your pivot back in your knife or,
no, that's exactly why I carry a hex bit with me, is because every now and then pivot gets a little loose, so.
Yeah.
No, so okay, so you go from the knife to I mean, was the pry kind of always on the horizon, or was this just another idea you had, or how did that kind of fall into the mix of making knives? Because I know knife makers that don't make accessories or other tools.
Yeah. So yeah, it was kind of a weird thing. I'm not a pry bar guy. I've
Oh,
never been.
Joseph, come
It
on.
it no. So I just it. Okay, first of all, I live in South Florida,
Okay.
and you have to wear shorts, otherwise you're just gonna pass out on the side of the road of heat exhaustion.
Yeah, no,
So
no, south
you
of
have to
Houston,
wear
I'm with
shorts.
you. I know that
True.
humidity life.
Yeah. So, it's not like I could carry a bunch of stuff in my pockets. And so pocket real estate became, tight. So, I can't just have pocket tools all over the place.
Right.
So it never seemed right to me.
Yeah.
Um, so I never thought I'd design one. But what I do need are bits,
Okay.
especially because I love changing pivot tension, and I love just messing with the knives, taking them apart, and
Yeah.
uh, and I was like, God, I wish I had a bit driver that slipped into my pocket.
Ooh,
So
okay.
that's actually how it started. I
Totally
wanted
different approach. I love that.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted a functional bit driver so I could carry, a WeHub, 4 millimeter microbit set with
Mhm.
and they'll be jingling around inside of the thing. But that's not cool. You can't take pictures on
Come
Instagram with
on,
that.
guys. Yeah.
But it's just not functional. And then I was like, well, all I really need is T6 and T8 to
Yep.
adjust the impulse. Um, so I only need two bits. And then if I'm going to
Mhm.
use bits, I might as well use 4 millimeter bits. If I'm going to do that, well, I'm not putting them in the center like most people, where I have to like hold the bit.
Yeah.
I mean, I might as well just put them in line and put a magnet in there to hold it in and make the clip kind of look like the same clip as the impulse. So,
Yeah.
I can take a picture on Instagram and everything match and look good. So yeah, I was like, crap, I need to go, I need to go design that.
No, so that's cool. I like this, bringing over some of the design elements. I love that the need for it did not start as I'd like a pry bar.
Right.
Because I too and now, so we were talking a little bit before I hit record about the size of it and how I'm normally, so my go-to pry is always a Casey Lynch 2.5
Mhm.
all access pass. It's a very small pry bar, and I don't need a whole lot. I don't use it for a whole lot, but it is nice to have when I need a flathead or something. But
Yeah.
now hearing your reasoning behind designing it this way, now I'm like, well, hell, I need a fulcrum because I like that makes so much more sense. So no, I just hearing that and knowing that makes it make sense to me. So I love that.
So what I mean, a lot of the people that are on Instagram, let's be honest, work in an office.
Sure,
A lot of the knife guys that are on Instagram and they
guilty.
post their knives and watches.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And there's nothing wrong with that. I work in an office,
right.
but I find myself not necessarily needing to pry things open. Do you know what a spudger is?
No. Educate me. Teach me.
So I don't know if this is the technical term or not, but
A
when
smudger.
a spudger is like a plastic pry bar that you use to like separate electronic
Or like
equipment
the dash
and
of a
like
car or something?
yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I think it might
I've
have a
never
few
heard
different.
that term, but I have a set of those, like, dash tools, like.
Yeah, so I mainly use them for like when you used to be able to change the screen on your iPhone or something like that, or you got to change the batteries in a Mac or something. You have a spudger, and it allows you to pry into things. So at work, that's what I mean. I take electronics apart all the time. That's what I
Yeah.
use a pry bar for mostly is spudgering.
Sp spudgering? Interesting.
So I don't know what
I don't know what the
I don't
verb
know.
is for that, but I googled it, and for those wondering, a spudger, or sometimes spludger with an L, is a tool that has a wide flathead screwdriver-like end that extends as a wedge, used to separate pressure-fit plastic components. Very nice. Yeah, yeah. So
Okay,
just
so
what I
that's
was talking about, but just on a smaller scale. I got you.
right, exactly. So I use my pry bar, quote unquote pry bar, mainly for spudgering and opening packages that I don't want to that have tape on them that I don't want to
Right.
get tape on my knife.
Yeah.
So it's probably very different than. So recently, I started a hashtag Use Your Fulcrum
Mhm.
contest on Instagram where I'm
Yeah.
giving away a Timascus clipped fulcrum so that people can post their pictures of what they use their fulcrums for. And one guy was taking a truss bracket off with his fulcrum and a hammer, just smacking into the back of the
Good
fulcrum.
God.
Yeah, good for him. Like that's awesome, but that's not what I use my fulcrum for.
Really
So I'm
heavy
glad to
duty
see.
usage. Yeah.
Yes. So I'm glad to see other people are using it heavy duty. But anyway, so yeah, that's what you know,
I love it.
that's what I use my fulcrums for.
That's cool. Man, I like I said, just hearing the story behind it and the why makes so much more sense to me. So I'm a huge fan. I mean, I was a fan before. And this isn't spoiling anything because you posted this and we're recording a little in advance, but you posted um, your lineup of four knives and two pry bars, and they're one of those two bright bars, it is a smaller version. So, anyways, we'll talk about that more later, I'm sure. But I'm very excited to see something smaller. But now I've got an itch for a full size as well. So,
You
anyways,
have truss brackets that need to get taken off, right?
listen, yeah, if you need some real heavy use, no, I mean, one of the things that I've really gotten to love about the brand, just in seeing you, you're super active in the community. You absolutely look like you take the things that people are asking for and make those changes. And I think you're doing a really great job of, not that you need me to tell you, but I think you're doing a great job of balancing, your creative, scratching your creative itch and doing all of these things, and then also taking in some of the feedback from the community and involving
Mhm.
the community in that, because over and over again, one of the sort of common denominators is the community, right? And that's what
Yeah.
makes all this stuff possible. And so it's really, really cool to see, sort of the evolution, and again, in such a short time, of something that, if you go to your profile, you're like 6,500 followers. But can I just thank you again? Again, you keep doing these things that just, you're like, why does anybody else do this? On your profile, Vero Impulse out of stock, Vero Fulcrum out of stock, Vero Synapse out of stock. Thank you. I listen. It's one thing to get frustrated with makers that do sort of limited runs or small drops, but the fact that you
Mhm.
have it just communicated right out front, like, I absolutely love
Yeah.
that. Thank you. It's such a smart idea.
Of course. Yeah, and yeah, it's almost 6,500. That's crazy. Actually, I did want to talk about um, a point that you made about bringing in community
Yeah,
feedback.
yeah, right
So
on.
I've always been interested in like hive mind. Like there's something to be said about having a lot of people's input on things. Now, there's obviously a lot of, you know, there's a lot of bad parts about that also
Sure.
is right, but having a lot of people being able to give you input on something that have completely different um, backgrounds
Yeah,
and have a completely different outlook on things, and it makes me think of things differently. Um, somebody somebody mentioned to me the other day, so this is actually coming, this podcast is coming out in about a month, so
yeah.
I'm not going to spoil anything, but um, hopefully by the time this podcast comes out, if not, I'm spoiling it. I'm I have some fulcrums that are with
Breaking
McNeese
news.
right now.
Woo! I'm a McNeese fan, so don't tease me.
In that
Mhm.
case, you may want to hold off on buying anything. Or
Yeah, yeah,
so
I'm gonna
uh,
have to do that.
I have some fulcrums with McNeeds that I've had for a while, and I haven't been able to pinpoint the exact design that I want to put on the back of them. And these
Mhm.
aren't going to be the last ones. I have other designs that I want to put on, but something as small yet important as the design on the back of a tool. It doesn't add functionality to the tool. It doesn't change anything.
Sure.
Uh, but somebody said to me, "Why don't you laser etch a ruler on the back of your fulcrums?"
Hell yes.
Right? And
So
doesn't it
smart.
seem so obvious?
Yeah, right out of the gate, absolutely. Yeah,
Yes.
literally never would have thought of that, but now that you say it, I'm
Right.
like, "Wait, doesn't he have one on the back? Nope, he hadn't done that yet."
No,
Okay.
it really should. Right. And
Yeah,
and that's the thing. It's something that's such a utility to have. It will help people in their day to day when they're carrying this, and they'll have it. He says he knows the measurements of it. He knows how wide the tip is. He knows how long it is. So he uses it as a
yeah,
ruler, but he'd like it to just be a ruler. And I was like, oh my god, that's so smart. I wish I thought of it so I could take credit for it, but
yeah,
at least it's there now. At least I
yeah.
can design a cool ruler on the back of the fulcrum
No,
and have it out there for people that want one.
it's funny that you say that, because I got to thinking, like, I don't need a ruler often, right? This person
Mhm.
obviously does, but I don't need it often.
Right.
But when I do, I dig through my drawer over here to my right, or my bag,
Mhm.
and I whip out my field notes, and I use the little ruler that's
Oh,
printed on the
right.
inside,
Yeah.
because I know that it's always there, and I know, I just know it's there. And so,
Yeah.
to have, again, yeah, I mean, if I had a fulcrum and I had a ruler, absolutely, it would take the place of that field notes because I just know I know I would have it on me more often because I always end up having to dig, and sometimes I don't have one, so I
Right.
end up having to guesstimate or figure out how I have to Google like the dimensions of my cell phone and use that for reference. Um, Listen, it works if you're in a pinch, but
Oh, no, for sure. I
but no, yeah, I mean, it is crazy to see, and you're absolutely right. It can be daunting, and there's a lot of noise when you have a
Mhm.
ton of voices coming at you, and it really is hard to weed out the noise from the actual communication and the wants of the many. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think you have, again, with these sort of integral changes, these really small steps, but meaningful steps. I don't, and again, that's another point that I didn't make earlier. That I think when you make these changes on these knives, I don't think that it is a just for the sake of doing it. I
Mhm.
think a lot of times it really is intention driven or purpose driven, and that again makes it all the more worth it. So my hats off to you there as well.
Thank you. Really
So
appreciate that.
you've got the impulse, you've got the fulcrum pry bar. Can you talk real quick just a little bit about the synapse and anything else you've got coming up? I know you've got the Axon. Am I saying that right? Axon
Yeah, Axon. Yep.
up for pre-order. Which by the time this goes live, the pre-order's already probably be closed. But anyways, yeah, I just want to talk a little bit about those models and anything else you got on the horizon.
Yeah, sure. So the Synapse, kind of weird how it came about. Uh, I'm usually a larger knife guy,
Hmm.
and my collection kind of leans more towards larger knives.
Sure.
And I got a couple knives last year that really, really changed my perception on that. I love my Holt, and
Hmm.
some may call it a large knife, but because it's so slim and compact, um, it made me kind of question, why do I want big knives? They felt more substantial for for a lot of uses, but
Yeah.
sometimes I kind of just wanted a thin, small knife. Um, Smaller package that worked well. So, and then again, hive mind, a lot of people said the impulse is too large for them,
Okay.
and I was like, well, not really a small knife guy. But then I started designing it, and then I started printing them,
Hmm.
and I found that I loved the form factor of the synapse, the smaller, just and again, flipping out a small knife that's 3D printed that works well and locks open was just
Yeah.
so cool. It was
Yeah.
just I found myself wanting to carry that 3D printed knife in my pocket just so I could flip it out. It was really cool. And then what I hope, if anybody out there is listening that has a Synapse can agree with this, that the flipper tab works really, really well
Yeah.
on the Synapse. It flies out like no, I don't want to say like no other small knife, but it flips out with authority for being a smaller knife.
Yeah.
uh, and I loved playing with it as with a 3D printed part. So I was like, you know what, I have to put this into production. And then it it kind of, a couple of larger names. And oh, actually, while I'm talking about it, let me just circle back to the impulse. A big reason why I think they sold out originally
Uh huh.
was, fortunately, I was in the knife community already, and I had a lot of friends that were in the knife community.
Yeah.
And when I started posting those first couple CAD models, my friends started sharing them. And when I had this Instagram, um, I only had 200 and I think 50 followers. Yeah, when I
Killing
posted
it.
that first, when I
Yeah.
posted that first CAD model, and I mean, very, very quickly, my friends were reposting it, and they really, really helped get the design out there, which got to the people that wanted to see it, which was really cool to see. So a lot of my, a lot of the success for the impulse came from people sharing it, which I just so grateful for. Going back to the Synapse, very similar thing. My friends that love the Impulse, the people that love the Impulse now loved the look of this and wanted to share it. And then a couple big names got a hold of it,
Mhm.
shared it also. I got it into Eugene Kwan's hands. He asked to check it out. Levon from Knife Nuts Podcast. I'm not sure
Mhm.
if I'm allowed to talk about competing podcasts,
No,
but
absolutely. I
um,
listen. Absolutely.
yeah, he got it in his
Oh
hands,
yeah.
and and a big thing, especially in the knife community, is being a design being vetted by somebody that you trust.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, you can say you like the knife, aesthetically, but who's to say it's going to work well? Who's going to say it's going to function well? The
Yeah.
blades ground well, thin behind the edge when it needs to be, fits well in hand. But when people that you trust say that, that kind of changes
That's
everything.
huge. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
you get the backing of someone that, again, if you've got an audience of 250 people, I mean, it's not small, but I
Yeah.
think when you put it in the hands of, it just takes one person. It's like, listen, I credit a lot of my more recent quote unquote success with the podcast to Sam and
Mhm.
Raven the Pirate and his,
Such a
him
good
jump.
guy.
I mean, because we had talked, we were friends before, and
Mhm.
finally I was just like, hey, let's just chat, and he jumped on, and it was all great timing. But again, just having him behind it, people started coming to check it out, and it's grown since then. But
Right. Well, and speaking to that, it's kind of the same way he said with kind of how he got his start, where um it was a very similar story
mhm,
where uh Pete's Pirate Life,
yeah.
got sent him a project, and that kind of got him started off as well.
Yeah, and well, and I think the other common denominator that we're forgetting about, of course, my case being the exception, but with you, with Sam, you guys are just insanely talented and grind it
Don't sell
out.
your,
I mean,
don't sell yourself short.
no, no, no.
I'm
I listen. I what
you,
I what I lack
you are
in
very good at this. This suits you well.
listen, what I lack in talent, I make up for in like work ethic. So like I'm back here grinding out. I spent way too much time working on the podcast today when I was supposed to be day jobbing it. Don't tell my boss. But anyways, uh,
Hopefully, he doesn't listen.
I get my work done. So whatever. No, not to go off onto too crazy a tangent, but just again seeing the growth and it sounds just in talking to you and knowing you and kind of in the knife community, just seeing the interaction like yeah, I mean you've got kind of a bunch of things going. You killer design aesthetics and design purpose. You've got um, great communication with the community, and then you've got the backing of some really great people. And I think all of those kind of put together kind of create a perfect storm of making these things successful and it, well deserved. I mean, for sure, because
Thank you.
again, you I can look at this lineup that you posted and there's so many similar design elements across all the products. I can tell that they are all in the same family, and I think that's really cool, especially again, you've been at this for like a year and a half. Like
Hmm. It's
that's just
crazy.
absolutely blow. I mean, as crazy as it is to you, it blows my mind. Like again, not to say like what the hell, but like really, it just in that short amount of time to just absolutely be crushing it. It's cool to see.
Thank you.
Um,
I really appreciate it. And about that picture, we're talking about. You're talking about the picture that has the four knives and the two pocket tools on it.
yes,
That again, somebody, hive mind, somebody said, hey, can you take a picture of all of your stuff together so we could see a size comparison? I
yeah,
just never thought to do that. So I took it, and I actually had to kind of take a step back myself, because again, that's a year and a half worth of work, um that I'm so proud of. Like,
yeah,
I'm like, I had to take a step back and go show it to my wife and go, look at this. Like I started this a year and a half ago, and this is where we're at. And
yeah.
it's just crazy to see.
Man, you listen again. I'll end my gushing with you're absolutely killing it. You know, when it comes to these designs, and you're just stand up dude. It's been cool to get to know you and
Thanks, man.
watch
Appreciate
all
it.
this stuff come out. What I've tried to make a habit of asking folks now, and the answer, you have a family, you have a day job that you love, you've got this incredibly successful knife designing, tool designing, and production, business going on. So it's the answer might be hard to choose, but what are you looking forward to? What are you excited about?
Yeah, that is that is a hard answer, hard question to answer. My life has changed a lot very very recently,
Yeah.
um, and I've never been in a better place. Um, I just had, my second son is now at the age where he's just over a year. He's getting his own. Um, he, what do you call it? Attitude. What's the word I'm looking for?
Personality, just
Thank you. Everybody's yelling at their iPad. Uh,
dude, no,
he's
it's
getting his
such a
own.
fun age for sure.
Dude, it's so amazing. And then my other son's 3.5, and he's a
That's
trip.
yes.
We just, living in South Florida, you kind of need a pool. We just finally bought a house with a pool in South Florida.
Hell yes.
Like my, you know, my yes, this is such a weird time with COVID and quarantining and stuff. I'm getting to spend a lot more time with my family.
Yeah.
I'm working with my wife now, who's helping out with this company.
Yeah.
She comes up to me and she goes, "Did you see this post that somebody put on Facebook? They said this. They love this. They
Just getting
can't."
excited. Yeah.
She's excited
Hell
about it.
yeah.
Setting up the office in the new house. It's I again, I wasn't expecting this. This isn't something that I was planning on doing, but the evolution of it, where I'm at right now, where I think it's going, it's just um I'm excited, man.
Yeah. No, I mean, and well deserved. That's, and one quick tangent, one quick aside. How, just real quick, how has it been dealing with COVID and two little ones and a fan, like all of that stuff? Have you guys been okay? Has it been crazier than crazy? What has that been like for you?
We the house that we came from um was the perfect house for my wife and me while starting the family.
Hmm.
Absolutely perfect. We very quickly we had our firstborn and then had our secondborn and kind of thought about maybe upgrading to a new house, and then COVID happened, and we were and I know this is going to sound bad for all the people that are in New York and living in small apartments with 3 kids, and I know it's going to sound bad, but not having a not being able to take my kids to the park, not being able to take them walking around the neighborhood, just in case, because when this all started, you
Yeah.
don't know how close you can get to people. So living in a smaller house without an outlet was really 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 difficult.
Oh, I
um,
imagine.
my son finally got used to going to preschool, and had friends there, loved the teachers. We had to take him out of that. It was a very it wasn't easy, and
Yeah.
I say that knowing that I had a house and my family was healthy, and
Sure.
I say that knowing that, and I don't want to be that guy, but everybody has
No, but
their
that's fair. Yeah, I mean, everybody's situation is different, and I think, yeah, I mean, same thing here. We certainly have our blessings, but we also have, we have some things that are driving us crazy, and yeah. So I mean, I can completely understand where you're coming from with that one.
Yeah, but that being said, it's that did drive us to look for a new house very quickly with
Yeah,
nothing else to do. Hey, we might as well look on Zillow for houses in the area,
right.
and we ended up finding. I mean, not to state a trope or anything, but this is our dream house. We got very very lucky in finding the house that was perfect for us,
Yeah.
and yeah, we're really really happy here. And I'm able to build my office here now.
Ooh,
um,
that's
yeah, and
exciting.
yes, absolutely. It's funny. The old house is when the synapses first came in,
Uh-huh.
and I had three plastic folding tables in
Oh,
in the
man.
living
Oh,
room,
man.
knives everywhere. It was not an ideal scenario,
Humble
but
beginnings.
right.
That's awesome.
My mom came by to help out. She sat on one plastic table. My sister came, mother-in-law, and helped. It all helped out. But now we have a little bit more room, which is much much needed.
Hell yeah. All right, man. Well, that's all I got for you. I appreciate you taking out some time, and I look forward to seeing what you continue doing down the road. You've done a lot in a short time, and so there's lots of promise with VERO Engineering and the stuff that you're creating. So if you guys are not already following him, VERO Engineering on Instagram, your Facebook group is pretty active as well. I recently joined that one. Sorry it took me a
Yeah,
minute. I'm not
yeah,
on
it's
Facebook a
crazy.
ton, but whether it's buying and selling on the secondary or folks just showing off their love
Yeah,
for the things, man. That and
I was.
you're
That's one thing I wasn't expecting. I mean, I was never really on Facebook that much myself, and I was never in the knife community there. I mostly did Instagram, but just how cool everybody's been about, you know, the Synapse has blue and red and different color scales, and they're
Mhm.
they're helping each other find the scales that they need, and
Yeah.
trying to
It's
find serial numbers and stuff. It's just such a cool experience seeing that.
Yeah, I mean, and it's what the community's all about. If you guys are on
Yeah.
Facebook, check out VERO Engineering Group, and then in parentheses you have name TBD. Is there like a is that a thing? Are you trying to come up with a special name for the VERO group, or what's
You don't like the name Vero Engineering name
n-
TBD?
name TBD? Oh, I just want to make sure. I think it's fine. It's how I know, like when I'm looking for you guys, like that's I'm like, oh, named okay, that's the group, but because there's the group and then there's the VERO Engineering like company page.
Page.
And so
Yeah,
to
yeah, which is
see
weird. I don't really know how that
the
works.
page versus the group, so it helps to see. But no,
Yeah.
I'd always
Oh,
wonder
I
that
got you.
since I
No,
since I jumped
I
on.
I I originally wrote that trying to find a name, and then honestly, I like that as the name.
All right, so we're gonna leave it. All right, guys. If you're not already, do yourselves a favor. Go follow Joseph on Instagram, VERO Engineering, and then the VERO Engineering Group name TBD on Facebook. Joseph, thanks again for taking some time out. I look forward to seeing what you do in the future, and again, just keep killing it, man. You deserve all the success that's coming your way.
Greg, thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate you having me on. This was really cool, dude.
Absolutely. All right, guys. We'll talk to you in the next episode. Thanks, everyone. Peace.